Got a new watch in today, and I am stoked. This is a Seiko, my favorite brand, and this is the Arnie reissue. It's a watch I've been waiting a long time to get my hands on, and I can't wait to get it unboxed and to show it to you. This is the SNJ025. Let's get this thing rolling. The year's 1985, and I'm sitting in a movie theater as a young kid watching an action flick starring Arnold Schwarzenegger called Commando. Well, not only was I blown away by the movie, pun intended, but his watch also made a huge impression on me. What was that awesome looking dive watch? Well, it turns out it was a Seiko, and it was a hybrid digital analog, the H558, that would be aptly re-nicknamed the Arnie because it was Arnold's personal watch, and he wore it in several movies throughout the 80s, including the blockbuster Predator in 1987, which was an epic movie, and that watch, the Arnie, got a ton of screen time in that film. There's a lot of shots throughout where it's just Arnie and his watch fighting the Predator. Now, this also shows how awesome and down-to-earth Arnold Schwarzenegger is as a man, bringing his own watch to his gigs. I love it. Let's take a quick look at the features of the original Arnie. It is a hybrid, as we mentioned, digital analog quartz movement, 46 millimeter case. It's 150 meter water resistant. It does have the tuna-like shroud around a bidirectional bezel. It's a battery powered watch, and it was made in Japan from 1982 to roughly 1990. So no longer offered, very hard to find, very collectible, and I've always wanted one, but was unwilling to pay upwards to $1,000 for a watch that might not be working, in spite of how much I love Arnold. No can do. Fast forward to today, and I'm very excited because we now have a tribute that may just be better than the original. That remains to be seen. Let's jump onto Seiko's website real quick, where you can see this watch is actually available for purchase right now for $525 US with 2-day shipping, but that is full suggested. Modern interpretation of the 1982 hybrid diver's watch. There they said it. That's about the only reference I'm seeing where they're actually acknowledging the original. Big feature for me is this is a solar powered watch. It does have a 6-month power reserve. It also has a power save mode, which is cool. It is also more submersible, up to 200 meters. There are 2 other versions of this watch currently being offered. One is a Pepsi bezel Paddy watch. The other is a gold accented limited edition, but the one I'm after is the one everybody's after, and that's the Arnie, the standard black and white colorway. I'm sure the other ones are great, and I may look into them later, but the Arnie is where it's at. Let's get to the desktop and get to what you came here for, and that's the unboxing. It's a very standard looking Seiko box, and I mentioned the $525 suggested. I did find it online for less, and I'll try to get some reliable links up shortly. But without further ado, let's slide this thing apart and see what's inside. Let me make sure we are in focus. Try to do this one time. And let's slide this box apart and see our Arnie reissue. And there you can see we had, it looks like it was in power save mode. I mentioned solar power. The power reserve should last 6 months, which is one of my favorite features of any watch, having solar power. Not changing batteries. Got your little retail tag there. It's the Seiko Prospex series. And what an awesome first impression. You have the very tall posture there with the tuna-like shroud around the unidirectional one-way bezel. And I'm just thrilled to be holding one of these. Let's see if we can focus a little closer here. You have that trademark dual display, the digital and analog combination that for its time was just remarkably cool back in the 80s. I also noticed the generous lume on this, which I would expect nothing less. And there's the Hardlex crystal. Many folks argue that it's a better feature for a diver watch than, let's say, sapphire, because Hardlex will not shatter the way sapphire would. It would crack if it was ever damaged in a diver. That's a plus. Very smooth, silky silicone strap, and there's a very sharp metal keeper there. Not sure how I feel about that, but it's definitely a nice detail. Let's dig into the rest of the box and finish our unboxing. And we have a booklet. This looks like our user's manual here. And Seiko does a really good job of putting together very easy to read manuals, and looks like Japanese and English. And lastly, we have our warranty registration card or packet. And this is a standard 3-year warranty from Seiko and our warranty registration card. Pretty standard stuff. And that's everything that's in the box. I don't see anything commemorating the original Arnie or referring to Arnold Schwarzenegger. I would have liked to have seen something that was, you know, a little bit more nostalgic or a little bit of a tribute to the previous version. But regardless, I'm just happy to have my hands on this one, and I'm grateful that Seiko decided to re-release or to at least issue this version. Zooming in, one of the things I notice on the face itself, it looks almost like a lighter black, and that may be because of the solar panel that's underneath. Another improvement is the second hand is longer on our reissue. You can see the original on the left here was much shorter and didn't reach to the chapter ring and was arguably less useful. Let's go ahead and go for the dismount here and pull the buckle on our watch band. Again, a very soft silicone. And a high shine stainless buckle there with some branding underneath. There you see Seiko stainless steel. And you can hear the jingling of the metal keeper. Weight-wise, this one weighs just over 4 ounces. I think it's a perfect weight. It's not too heavy. It's not too light where it might feel overly cheap or insignificant. I think it's the perfect balance of practical and quality feel. Let's pull off our retail hang tag here. And let's get the backing off, and let's take a closer look at some of the details of this watch. Take a quick peek at the back, and the first thing I notice is there is some laser etching. This watch is made in China. Wipe off some of the residue here, take a closer look. That doesn't go unnoticed. A $525 watch, not made in Japan, so that is noteworthy to me. And not sure how this watch was handled for shipping, but it looks like the adjustment knobs are actually unscrewed or screwed down right now, so I'm not sure who or how this was packaged or if this was repackaged, but that's how it came to me. Nevertheless, this watch is very well made and looks to have wonderful fit and finish. Take a closer look at this very long silicone watch band, and as is expected on a Seiko diver, we've got the Seiko Wave on the tip of the strap. Let's talk about the rotating bezel real quick. Again, we've got the tuna shroud protecting the bezel against incidental turns. This is a one-way counterclockwise turn 120 click bezel, which is very cool. One of the things I noticed though is the mechanism doesn't feel as refined as I might have expected it to feel. It's very solid, well constructed, but the action is a little rougher than I wanted it to be. If I compare that in contrast to another Prospex, my Samurai for example, the Samurai feels much smoother, much more refined, and much more premium. And it is a one-way unidirectional bezel as well, but it's just feels better quality. That's all I can say. Doesn't mean I wouldn't trust the Arnie. It just is something I noticed and wanted to point out. Now let's take a look at how to adjust this thing. I've skimmed the manual a little bit. It's pretty intuitive. We unscrew the crown. And of course, that's counterclockwise to the left to loosen the crown. And for the adjustment knobs, it's actually the opposite. We're actually tightening these So we're turning these to the right. Here, the bottom left, we have the A button. The top left, we have the B button. Again, we're tightening these knobs down to expose that O-ring so we can engage the plunging mechanism. And there's our light. And it does several other things which I'll show you shortly. But now I can scroll through with the A button to our different modes. You have day, date. Keep scrolling through. We've got a secondary time. Again, this can be programmed to your local time. If you're traveling, you would reset the main screen to whatever city you're at, and you have a toggle to your local time. Stopwatch, start, stop. The B button starts, stops, and if you hold down the B button, it will then reset the stopwatch. And scrolling through further, we have an alarm. And so whatever mode this is in is what we're going to be programming. So right now I'm back at the home screen, and whatever the home screen says digitally, it's going to say analog. We pull out the crown, and that puts us into set mode. Now I can do the adjustment mode to the seconds, scrolling through with the A button to the minutes, the hour. The crown does all the adjustment. A button will scroll through to the date. I can set the day and the month, the year. And now we're back to the home screen, our primary time. And once we push in the crown, you can see the analog dials will now adjust to whatever time we switch to. Pretty simple. So scrolling through, I personally am not going to be diving with this watch, so I'm probably going to be carrying this one with the adjustment knobs exposed so I can get to the light and scroll through to the different modes. And again, we mentioned the second time. This is I guess the L stands for local, because if you are traveling, you can adjust the time to wherever time zone you're in and still maintain your local time back home, and you would adjust this accordingly. While you're at home, you can toggle this to a different time zone so you can keep track of time elsewhere. But just know whatever is on the home screen or the main time on the digital dial will be represented on the analog dial. Again, the stopwatch, the alarm. We can adjust the alarm once we're at that menu there with the crown. If you push both buttons in, we can get a turn on our signal. So every hour it will signal. You can also turn the alarm on and off by pushing the A and B button in simultaneously. Also gives you an example of the alarm sound itself. We mentioned the light button does other things. If I hold the light button down for a couple of seconds, it gives me a battery power status. Right now the level is 10, and that is the maximum of the battery. So that is cool. And then we're back to the home screen. Of course, I mentioned there is an alarm. I'm going to give you an example of how the alarm sounds. I'm going to hold in the A and B button just to let you hear it. You'll also notice there's a couple of logos at the very left-hand side. The upper left-hand corner is your alarm on and off, and the lower left is the signal, hourly signal on and off, and those can be turned on and off from the home screen. You can turn the signal on and off by holding down the A and B buttons simultaneously, and in the alarm screen you can turn the alarm on and off by doing the same thing. You just push the A and B button simultaneously, and you'll toggle those on and off. Overall, pretty easy operation. I'm very happy with the controls and the functionality of this watch. So how does this watch stack up? Well, I got it back on the pillow here. Let's take a look at the legendary SKX007. This is my 007J1. I did put the original stock strap back on so we could do a good comparison here. And I'll let the pictures speak for themselves. You can see the much lower profile of the SKX versus the taller Arnie. The SKX is definitely more of a classic design with that pillow-like case. Does not have drilled lugs like our Arnie, but a much lower profile, much more classical look. Again, it's all analog, and it is also automatic versus a quartz movement. But this gives you a good size comparison and posture comparison of the two watches. Let's get both of these watches back off the pillows here, and we'll unstrap them and get a closer look at the size-by-size comparison of these two. Again, the SKX on our right versus our Arnie reissue on the left here. You can see the Arnie is significantly much larger. I will say this, the strap on the Arnie is superior to the stock SKX, which is a lot stiffer, has almost a hard waxy feel to it. But on the back, case back, the SKX to me dominates the Arnie. It's much more classy. It's got that raised detail, and the Seiko Wave is significantly more premium on the SKX, in my opinion. You can see the screw back is much smaller and more pronounced on the SKX. You might disagree with me, but I think the backing on the Arnie is a little disappointing. I don't think it's as detailed as I would have wanted it to be, but that's just an opinion. This gives you a better look at the case diameter. 47.8 millimeters versus roughly 43 on the SKX. A lot bigger watch on the left there. And one last view here of the straps. Both straps are going to be on the longer side because these are both diver watches, but it is noticeable that the Arnie is a longer strap, which I don't love because I have small wrists, but oh well. Lastly, let's take a quick look at how it compares to my Samurai. The Samurai is definitely holding its own against the Arnie as far as intrigue and posture and presence, but the Arnie is significantly taller and all around bigger than the Samurai. That may be good or bad, but just trying to show you a little bit of a perspective here of how this watch lines up with my traditional divers. A lot taller. So how's the Lume bright on this thing? It looks very generous. I'm going to kill some lights here, and I've got a 1000 lumen Phoenix PD35. I'm going to just torch this for a second, and let's see if we can pick up how awesome the Lume bright is on our Arnie reissue. And you can see it is so bright, it's actually lighting up the interior chapter ring. It's sort of glowing. I don't know if it's showing up on camera, but very generous lume, and of course at the 12 o'clock on the bezel as well. Seiko's lume treatment is always world class, and here is no exception. It's awesome. The backlight for the digital dial is amazingly bright. It's perfect. It's so bright it's not showing up on the camera very well, but just a wonderful presentation, very functional lighting system on the analog and digital side of this watch. Could not be happier. Try to get a shot so you can see. There you go. You can see the time there. So thumbs way up on how this thing lights up in the dark. One small criticism is I do wish that the backlight would stay on longer, or that I could adjust the length of time. Sort of like on the Casias, you can go 1 or 3 seconds. I know that sounds like a petty gripe, and the Lume Bright more than makes up for that. Last but not least, let's get this thing on wrist, and that's what it's all about. And the first thing I notice is how comfortable the strap is, but it is long. I'm 4 holes from the end, and I can still see the tip of the strap on the top there. But very soft, subtle, comfortable, and the watch rides very, very well. It's not a small watch. My wrists are on the smaller side, just under 7 inches, more like 6 3/4. And this is definitely how I would wear it, with the adjustment knobs exposed so I could engage the functions of the watch. Unless you're diving, that's what I would recommend. But very comfortable. Let's give you the reverse angle here again, showing that metal keeper. It does look very interesting. It adds some nice detail to the watch. And you can just see very handsome, very masculine looking watch. Final thoughts in closing. What do I love about this watch? Well, solar powered is number one. That's a huge upgrade over the original. Also, another one would be drilled lugs. That's something that makes switching out your watch band so easy. Also, an improvement over the original would be the increased 200-meter water resistance over the original 150-meter. Not that I'm ever going to go scuba diving. The longer second hand, way more functional than the original. Built-in perpetual calendar. The calendar will run up to the year 2100 with all the adjustments already pre-configured. Easy adjustment and outstanding control of the watch itself. The menus, how to adjust everything is so easy. And lastly, the excellent Seiko Lume. It is pristine. So, what I do not love about the Arnie reissue. Number one, it's made in China. That does not go unnoticed. The original was made in Japan. All my other Seikos that I love are made in Japan. The second thing, that would segue into the higher price point. I think for a made in China watch, this price point should be a lot less. I think this watch would be an absolute great value at $300 or $325, but $525 is getting up there. The bezel mechanism I thought was a little lackluster and uninspiring. The backplate as well was a little bland for my taste. And why they have to make this watch even bigger. Arnold Schwarzenegger made it big enough. And for the suggested price that they're asking, I feel that they could have made the packaging, the presentation a little bit more special, a little bit more commemorative, or acknowledging Arnold at least. But those small criticisms aside, I think this watch is an outstanding timepiece and very much worth you checking out. I do think it would be a great value at the $325 range. If you can find it anywhere in the 300s, pick one up and let me know what you think. That's just my 2 cents, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. Stay tuned for more videos, more watch reviews, more gear reviews here on No Beta Gear. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.